Welcome to the Zinger podcast, where we look back at the AFL Redraftables. This year, we are looking at the year 2000. Essendon's last premiership, the almost undefeatables, except for that one fateful loss to Western Bulldogs. Carlton had a fantastic season, which just fell short with a Anthony Koutafides knee injury. Geelong made the finals again after Bomber Thompson led them to fifth, but a elimination final loss to Hawthorn led them to believe they were just a few short pieces away from a tilt. But little did we know that a team up north in Brisbane was about to take centre stage for a few years to come. Let's look back at the off-season of 2000, and I'm going to be joined by my two good friends, Mr. Jesse Kochen and the one and only Mr. Zellman. How are you, gentlemen?
Shafe, good to see you. Good to be with you on this Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to Linda.
Happy Mother's Day.
Absolutely.
Just thought I'd get that out there. And
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey.
How have you celebrated with young Luch and young Deandra?
Yeah, happy Mother's Day to the wonderful mums out there, to Lily, to Banger, to Linda, to Luch, all doing wonderful work. And it's weird out there. I went for mum and dad came over, which I'm not even sure was allowed, but they came over for about half an hour, and Luch and I went out to get some acai bowls and brought them back. I thought that was a nice little Mother's Day present while they played with Charlie for a little bit. So still seems a bit strange out there. I feel like people are a bit more relaxed, Koch. Do you get that impression as well?
I do. There's a lot of Trent Henschel going round.
Yeah, so, there's people just
I feel
thinking,
like,
when...
We did say mid-May though, Zellman. I think Zellman was right on it early that mid-May was going to be this, Trent potential wasn't just going to be in the team, but he was going to be,
I think he's a sub. I think he's a sub at the moment.
You think?
But look, High Street was bustling. Just that there was no shops open, but people were just walking around. I think that...
It's fine though. You're allowed to walk out and about.
Yeah, you're allowed to walk. The only problem is that I don't think any of us saw coming was just how fucked America is. Like our co-host and very good friend, Dr. Dave, has been on this for a while. So It's not much optimism there. There's so much dysfunction. The states and the federal government aren't, in concert with one another. I think that's what we've done well here, Koch, with generally the states and the Commonwealth seem to be on the same page.
Yeah, for sure. I think America, interestingly, is returning to a time of very much state by state, and the national effort is just not there. So I think you'll find some states have very different rules and situations to other states. But I think, luckily for Dave, he's in one of the better situations there. But I think it seems here that Scott Morrison's wielded a bit more power to be able to bring the states into line and be able to have a little bit of control, especially over Rogue Dan, who was trying to kind of do his own thing. But it seems like at the 11th hour, at least on the last set of restrictions, that Scott Morrison called him into order and kind of got a bit more of a national strategy. So,
done. Well done to ScoMo. There's no political allegiances on this podcast, but
no, we're not.
I think all our leaders have done a really good job. I don't know how the hell you manage a crisis like this. It's unbelievable. It affects, obviously economic issues, political issues, health issues. It's all bundled into one. And this is coming on the back of the bushfires. Can you imagine being, sworn into power, a year ago, Morrison, maybe just under or just over, and having to deal with two of the biggest crises that an Australian politician's probably faced ever in succession. So I think, Frydenberg is my man, done a fantastic job. But even Andrews, I think, has been good. Still probably maybe a little too restrictive at the moment, but I think we just have to cut all of our leaders a bit of slack.
Yeah. Norman, do you think our man Treasurer Frydenberg took anything that we said to him to heart in that one fateful night in Matryoshka about 4 years ago?
It would have been much more than 4 years ago.
No, I think it was Sax's 30th. So I'm going to guess just under 4 years ago.
Wow, it was underfoot. He was wearing a leather jacket.
Yeah.
He was in very fine form. I think I might have mentioned to him that I think he didn't recognise me. He didn't recognise me, no.
Now he would after this podcast.
I wonder if our listener, Josh Frydenberg. Yeah.
Is all Frydenberg's doing today in the middle of a global crisis is listening in to the Zinger podcast.
I think he's actually watching.
About the 2000 redraftables. One funny thing about Frydenberg, he's a big Carlton supporter, and he went to the game with a couple of older Carlton boys who would told me this story, and he was eating a meat pie at a Carlton Essendon game once, and he bit into it, and the meat just like squeezed out in front of this Essendon supporter in front of him, over the jacket. And it caused an absolute uproar.
Yeah,
but
don't think he got that person's vote. No,
lost that vote exactly. But yeah, no, it's great. It's great we've diverted onto Josh Frydenberg, who's a wonderful man. I wonder what he would have thought about the 2000 trade period, Shake, prior to the draft.
Insane,
crazy. Just looking at it now, amazing amount of trades that went on.
So, look, let's get right into it. But the first thing I want to talk about is St Kilda. So. This is coming off the back of actually listening to the #Sacked podcast with Graham Thomas recently. St Kilda had finished last. They had sacked Tim Watson as their coach, and they just ushered in Malcolm Blight as their number one man. And they basically just opened their wallet out in the trade period. So, and I think they've done the best in the trade period. It didn't result in a premiership later down the line, but to snag Fraser Garrick, Aaron Hamil, who were two very, very good footballers for them, Stephen Lawrence, Capuano, and Craig Callahan, who all had their moments over the next few years for St Kilda, and they got rid of basically pick 4, pick 18, pick 33, and maybe another player for that, like. Okay, 4 turned into Luke Livingston, which we'll talk about in a moment, Zell. And I guess pick 18 turned into Daniel Kerr, and Brisbane snagged Martin Pike at pick 33. But having said that, at least 3 of those players really allowed St Kilda to be set up for a little bit of a run there in the early to mid 2000s. So. I'm not too sure what you guys thought.
It's rare. So where did St Kilda finish in 2000 before the trade period? You said they were last.
They were last.
They got Rewalt and Cozzy, and they traded additional picks
Garrigan Hamil
as well.
Exactly. So they traded Daryl Wakelin and got Port Adelaide's pick 4, and then they untraded that for Aaron Hamil.
Sam Cranage. And pick 4.
I mean, that's so we I know that we delve into Carlton a little bit, but this is probably the start of the end for the Blues, and it's been 20 years of, with minor blimps on the way, 20 years of hell, but this is where it all started. I think we did okay. Justin Murphy was probably the type of player that we should have traded, and we got pick 11 for him, which is a pretty good return. He went to Geelong, but bloody hell, Shafe, what have we done with those picks? I don't even want to know.
Yeah, I mean, well, you've just finished 2000, so you've lost in the prelim. You're doing the handover from David Parkin to Wayne Britton. There is probably a sense that Carlton could probably have a crack at it for at least a couple more years, but you've tried to tread this fine line between staying competitive and also rebuilding, and
which I think was good. I actually think the approach was pretty sound because we had a really experienced core. We still had Ratton, and even Bradley was still playing sauces last year, 2001. McKay, yeah. So I don't mind the strategy, but you have to hit on those picks. We had pick 4, pick 11, pick 15.
Yeah.
All misses.
Exactly. So you started with pick 15, I think. That's the one that you started with, and you picked the Wiggler. But to get pick 4 and pick 11 in the draft, it's a pretty good haul.
It's
just
good.
The fact that you went 0 for 2 on them is was
especially looking at the players that came after. And what about Koch's mob? Where were they at? The Cats, and you said they lost an elimination final, did they?
Well, this is the strange part about Geelong. This was the one period where they just didn't. I mean, they may have nailed the draft, but they didn't.
Did they?
Oh, I don't believe so. But this is the year where they go, well, we're 5th. Maybe we're closer than we thought. And they've gone after and they've picked up 3 players in the draft in the trade period. Justin Murphy, who only played 1 season at Geelong. Ken Kingsley, who was definitely a fair player for them for a little while until the Bomber Thompson rumours got in the way.
I remember Ken Kingsley. Ken Kingsley was named the AFL sexiest player.
Really?
He was. I remember that.
You remember that guy?
Yeah, I do.
Let's see if we can get that up, Shafe, and share.
Bomber Thompson's still got the better of him though, so obviously looks on everything.
Has anybody ever Googled in the last 20 years Ken Kingsley AFL sexiest player? Because I just have.
I think only you and Ken Kingsley have.
Look at the Google graph; it's spiked today.
Nothing's come up. Although there's a Ken Kingsley retires post on Big Footy.
Yeah.
So who was the other one that they got? They got
and Mitchell White. They've tried to revamp their whole forward line and go, all right, well, let's get Mitchell White, let's get Ken Kingsley and Justin Murphy, and
they threw away a lot of draft capital.
Yeah, exactly. They threw the baby away with the bathwater.
They gave away all their picks for all those players. Pick 11 for Murphy, 27, 45, and 57 for White, and 42 for Kingsley.
But knowing Geelong, they had 1 pick in this whole thing, which was pick 44. And of course,
they would not have been able to pick
Josh Hunt. They find a 200-game footballer in the midst of it all. So
I'll stay mute on that one.
You don't rate him? Koch didn't rate him, did he?
My worst. Yeah, we'll get to him.
Was he?
Really?
He did a beautiful kick, though.
I won't get to him. I'm sure you guys will get to him, but I won't.
No, I actually won't get to him.
Ooh, I'm.
Yeah. It depends if Shape might be picking though.
It depends how my list shapes up.
Yeah.
What about the Don Shape in the 2000 trade period? You didn't do too much.
I can't look at it. I can't look at it.
Well, the trade period you didn't do anything.
I know it's 15 to 20 years later. And so you can't go, well, this is the reason why someone like Dodoro should be sacked. But look, we finished the year 2000. Sure. No, he's been at the club for a while. I don't think he's the title of list manager till 2003, I think. But he was definitely
when did Terry Wallace get the title?
As soon as Hachi
self-anointed.
Yeah.
I love that line last night.
So look, Essendon finishes top of the ladder, so we have pick 17. We select James Davies, who plays a combined total of 3 games. Either side of him is Scott Thompson and Daniel Kerr. We then pick Ted Richards, which is a good pick, but he played all his football at Sydney, essentially. I think he only played about 30 games at Essendon. Then we pick Jordan Bannister, the umpire.
It's not the umpire.
Mark Bullen, just, and then Mitchell Davis. We're trying to bring some youth into this premiership team, and we go 0 for 4.
Yeah, that would have been a big year for you guys because you had to get rid of a lot of your really good mid B+ to A players from the salary cap region. So if you imagine if you picked up like a Thompson or a Kerr or one of those to really bring in, and it could have been your window would have been extended. So
Adelaide's completely missed the boat, and they usually do fantastically during trade periods, I find. But they traded away picks 12 and 23 for Matthew Bode and Evan Hewitt, who, let's be honest, I don't think I recall either of those players. Now, 12 and 23.
You remember Bode? You definitely remember Bode.
He was a short red hair, right?
He had hair similar to Uncle Zed, I think, at times. Koch? No?
Perhaps. But they traded away pick 12 and 23, which turned into Sean Burgoyne and Drew Petrie. So, not very
Has anyone
impressive.
Googled Matthew Bode lately?
World's sexiest man.
One of the things, can I just say, I think we're being a little bit harsh on clubs, and you guys, I mean, look, it was rich coming from me a little bit in terms of the Cats, but being very harsh, I think, on the Bombers and Carlton in terms of your drafting. I mean, to me, it seems clear that no one really has a clue. I don't think, I mean, yes, like we see Collingwood and West Coast and Hawthorns pick up guys, but I just see guys who go in the third and fourth rounds, and this is the whole Tom Brady thing, is that like everyone's missing on these guys. Once you go past the first round, there's basically, if you're picking anyone in the second round, everyone's had a crack at him. So to say that like that my club missed on a certain guy or my club picked this guy before that guy, reality is that
there's clubs that miss on players, and then there's clubs that miss on players every single year, and there's also clubs that seem to hit on the second, third, fourth, fifth rookie draft players. So that's how you can tell the difference between a good club and a club that just doesn't know what they're doing on the list management side of things. And every single draft, the same mistakes repeat themselves. I didn't mind Carlton's strategy in the offseason. Let's get younger. You know, we've got 3 picks in the top 15. There was a huge opportunity to rebuild, and then every single one was a bust, which is just, you know, that set us on our course for, as I said, 20 years of crap, which we're still not even out of. So, and even as Shafe says, I think Geelong's strategy
Do you think your history's changed if, for example, in the first round you pick Scott Thompson over Simon Wiggins? Like, does Scott Thompson become that player? Does he transform the club? Like, I think
it's not just one decision though. It's a pattern. It's a pattern of behaviour.
But like, what is Carlton looking for that it continues to miss? That, because I feel like there's a pretty good level of consensus among most of the picks. I don't think there are some players who reach, and some clubs who reach for players. But I feel like generally there's obviously like a pool of talent, and everyone goes, right, these guys are the best, and then we separate them into first, second, who we think's first, second, third rounders. And it's like, is some clubs really that much more switched on, or is their order that different pre-draft, or are they, I just don't know if there's that much difference between the club. I think there's huge difference in the culture that they get brought into, but I'm just not sure. If you got drafted to West Coast,
you're saying it's more developed
in the last 20 years, you had a much higher rate of success.
Yeah. I'll
feel that.
I'll counter argument that Kocho with, and once again, I don't want to make it about Essendon or Carlton, but Carlton selected Wiggins at 15 and Essendon Davies at 17. What do they think these players were going to become? Neither of them were quick. Neither of them were that fantastic.
But like, what was Scott Thompson? Like, he could be nothing.
No, he was Scott Thompson.
But he just, I know it's not a great argument. He just looked the part. He was, from the get-go, he was like an in and under midfielder, strong core.
To maybe Essendon and Carlton, I think the mentality was, let's just try and take shortcuts, and let's try and, we'll turn Trent Spawn into something, or we'll turn Simon Wiggins into that, Brett Ratton replacement, or, whatever it is we envisage, without actually just picking the best talent. And I think that mentality was carried through year on year on year, whereas Geelong's strategy might have just been pick the best available player at every single time and back your development in. But we weren't set up that way. We still aren't. I
feel that's more likely to be the case. I just feel like, I'm looking at Simon Wiggins' Wikipedia here, and it
Did you Google?
It's another new search item on Google at the moment. But it's saying that he's battled injury and form particularly in his first season. Like, there's circumstances that just might have been outside of his control, and he might have been a fine player. And if he goes to, I don't know, a better club, and he's maybe a better player. like, I just feel like there's so. Underestimate.
Wiggins probably isn't. Wiggins actually wasn't bad value. It wasn't the worst value. He played 116 games. Like, he was a wash shape. Would you call it? He also was pre-season premiership player, of course,
Oh,
2005 and 2007. But I
He
think
got
that
nominated for the Robert Rose Awards. He didn't win, but he got nominated, and that got into his
yeah,
highlights.
Yeah.
Like, well, for getting nominated.
yeah.
The
Well done.
Wiggler.
What else happened in that trade period, King? There was we've spoken about St Kilda. We've
A lot of
spoken about
misses.
West Coast. There's a lot of West Coast I see here as well. They went bananas.
They got rid of
West Coast,
everyone.
but
It's crazy that they acquired a lot of players.
They acquired everyone, sorry.
Got a lot of people that I've never heard of, if I'm being honest.
never
Yeah.
heard of, and I don't know how much impact they had.
Yeah. But it shows you that teams can miss, like Geelong. This is right in the midst of selecting the Chapmans and the Stevie J's of their list building. And they've had one season where they've gone out and got everyone. And, they've missed the both. But
Mitchell White stands out. I mean, 27, 45, 57. Yes, 45, 57 aren't that high. I've just thrown 3 draft picks at him. Now, looked, he was actually a former All-Australian, which I didn't
Was
realise.
he good, Mitchell White?
he's
Well, he
that
was
classic
Australian.
third tall, like the Ben Holland.
Yeah.
He's that sort of a yesteryear type of player.
Probably the biggest trade, which, putting aside Aaron Hamil, which I think was the beginning of the end for Carlton, because he was the first player. I even remember saying at the time, he was the first
Fraser
player.
Gary.
But Carlton
Fraser
never
Gary's
lost.
massive.
Before 2000, Carlton never lost players they wanted to keep, but everyone wanted to play for Carlton. The fact that our best forward or second best forward went to someone like St Kilda was the biggest wake-up call at the time, and it was the cracks started to appear. That was many Carlton supporters said at the time, or didn't say at the time, but now say, looking back, that was the beginning of the end. But Peter Bell going from Kangas to Freo, that is still having an impact today because he's now the list manager. So you can see that. I mean, how significant is that, Shafe? He's now setting I don't know if he's list manager or CEO. He's got some senior position.
Yeah, he's the
Mayor of Geraldton.
he's the world's sexiest man in Fremantle. Look, I think the biggest trade of the trade period. I mean, there's some premiership players that got swapped around, like Paul Williams going to Sydney. But I think the most impactful one was the Collingwood Brisbane trade of Collingwood jettison Mal Michael and pick 22 for Jared Malloy and a late round pick. Now,
wow.
Yeah, pick 22 is Richard Hadley and whatever. He also played a decent career. But now Michael, the fact that he was just, cast aside and given to Brisbane really just allowed Brisbane to, set up that back line. It was probably the most intimidating defender until Scarlett really took hold. There was probably a good period where Scarlett and Mal Michael was probably the two best. So, look, insane.
I think Fraser Gary was stiff on that assessment.
Sorry?
I think Fraser Gary was stiff on that assessment.
Probably you're right. But I think Fraser Gary was already a very good footballer. So it's like you knew what you were getting. Even though he was a premiership half-backman at West Coast and turned into a full forward, Mal Michael was a nobody. And Lee Matthews sent him to the gym and he became, the most dominant fullback for a couple of years.
Yep. Done.
Excellent. Let's kick things off, shall we? So, look, I don't think I've ever let Zellman go first. So,
Yeah, you have, King. The first one I went first.
Well, that feels a long time ago now, Zell. So
it does. For pick one, do you know what? This wasn't as easy as you think, was it, Koch?
Easy for me.
Was it? Shafe?
Wasn't easy.
For you as well?
Wasn't easy. I
didn't think it was easy.
It wasn't easy.
What?
Wasn't easy.
Could we see a similar Jonathan Brown type fall?
It's possible.
Oh my goodness! Goodness!
I've gone Saint Nick.
Wow!
Oh my goodness!
6-time, best and fairest, 5-time All-Australian. The best thing that I noticed when I was doing some research into Nick's career, his All-Australians were all spread throughout his career. Like he had some at the start of his career, some towards the middle, some towards the end. He was still unbelievable when he retired. He never really lost that. He was still St Kilda's best player, I reckon, in his last year. I remember how much he just destroyed Carlton, like a lot of these players did. At the the 2000 draft class really had a bit of a picnic, but he was just almost unstoppable. You couldn't match up on him. You had to put like a supreme athlete as a fullback, and at that time, fullbacks tended to be more of the lumbering type. So he pretty much changed the way forwards play just by how aerobically brilliant he was. He'd move up to the he'd run to the wing. He'd then double back, sprint forward. Be impossible to play four quarters on him. You'd always have to put a midfielder on him when he left the forward 50. And I think just with that combination of power, speed, just aerobic capacity, his marking ability, his field kicking, I thought was fantastic. Kicking for goal, I think early in his career and maybe took some parts in the middle weren't unbelievable, weren't the best parts of his game, but still passable. But also just leadership and everything else. He was the perfect modern footballer and one of the best centre-half forwards I've ever seen play. And it really was an honour to watch him play pretty much all of his 300 games, Shaf. I'd say I watched a hell of a lot of them. But I think that for me, he's just a little bit above the next few in this draft.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's far and away the best player. And I think I was interested to hear, Shave, yesterday, your rating system about how you graded players. I have approached it a little bit differently. And I can't think of it in terms of, mine's a bit more rough in terms of the categorizing. I don't have the starring. But if I'm picking again, how many times out of 100 am I going to pick Nick Rewald if I'm doing this draft? And I think it's 100 times out of 100 for Nick. Like, I think there's very little variance. I think no matter what, I think he's probably an example where no matter what situation, because he probably got drafted into one of the less good situations. I think he's an example of you draft him into any situation and he's elite. And I don't think that's not very common. And I think he played a big part in transforming St Kilda. Didn't get them over the line, but one of the other interesting things I've found doing this process over the last few weeks is seeing how overrated premierships are and how I've found them to be overrated. And I think it's a sad I guess, fact that you have
Would you give 3 of them back, Kocho, in the last 13 years? Would you give 3 of them back in the last 13 years?
No, from a club perspective, it's huge. From a club and fan perspective, but in terms of how you rate a player, I think like so much of a premiership is luck and situation and all that. It doesn't everyone remembers Nick the Nick Rewald smother. Like, I mean, I don't, Shave, you probably know his grand final stats and have a better memory of that. But I kind of just feel like, yes, he had the yips, but in terms of effort and like what he gave to the club, I think that kind of thing over an extended period of time, and Cap, I agree in terms of finishing off his career strongly, just being wall-to-wall career, just absolute gun. Well done to Nick.
Well done, Nick.
So
I love how Phil said last night in his pod, well done to Matt Rosa.
Well, it's a big achievement for him.
We'll add that to his Wikipedia page.
Well done.
We may have to update everyone's Wikipedia pages. We should go in there and do that. Redraft it at number 2.
It's certainly possible. So let me make quickly the case against Nick. I would have had him at pick 1, but this is the case against Nick. So, yes, he's fantastic. Yes, he revolutionised centre-half forward. But similar to what I was arguing the other day about Travis Cloke, if you need Nick Rewalt to be up here, St Kilda was anticipating him to be a 10 out of 10, and he was a 10 out of 10. Having said that, for many years, his goal kicking was a bit of a challenge. And him not being such a dead-eye dick early on in his career, did that hinder St Kilda? In a sense that if he was a dead-eye dick, do they actually go on a run in 04 to 06 where they're really a premiership team rather than just a very good team? Now, like, the argument against Travis Cloke was Collingwood needed him to be a 9 out of 10 forward. And for many years, especially in the mid-2010s, he was really just a 6 or 7 out of 10 forward. And it really just cost them. So, like, does that actually have a factor in? And I think in my theory is it did a little bit, but not nearly enough to knock him off the number one perch.
I'd agree.
Look,
I do agree.
I think in 04, 05, 06, they were pretty close to a flag. I just think he's so unlucky. Like, looking back at his career, and you know, my wife and her family, big St Kilda supporters, as you know, they were it's traumatic to think just how unlucky that team is. They were almost there so many times. They could have probably snuck a flag in 04, 05, 06. They had that such a good list then, and then again they had that surge in 2010, 2011. Unbelievable to think that after all his 300 games, how many finals, that he just never snagged a flag. And then there's so many less deserving players who have for teams that weren't as good, which I think would probably stick in his guts. But I think that
I definitely agree with that assessment, and I think it's a blight on the actual code that you have your gun forwards not being able to kick big goals. I think you think of any other sport and you're like, gun forwards are always the dead-eye dicks, and it just, for some reason over the last 15 years, and it sounds like it was to do with the whole osteitis pubis and no goal-kicking situation. I don't know if that still goes on today, but obviously guys aren't practicing or not being allowed to practice, or I don't know what they're doing, but if forwards...
Maybe just all the running is doing, and then the fatigue, I reckon that's the stuff.
But, like, do you trade 60% of the running for a bit better accuracy? I think you probably do. Although I think probably what may have hurt, and like, he played with a number of different forwards, is that, I mean, Nick Rewalt, in an ideal world, and obviously, like, he played for an unbelievable team, so it's hard to get more ideal than what he was situated in. But I think in an ideal world, he's paired with a very accurate full forward, and I think, like, Cozzy wasn't that. So I think that's a big, if he was paired with, like, someone who was very, very accurate and he was playing more upfield, and you have like a dead-eye dick around goal, I think that helps the team more. I mean, I think Cozzy was pretty accurate, but he just didn't play enough games or wasn't impactful.
It's dangerous to say dead-eye dick when we're talking about Rewalt.
No, I'm saying he's not a dead-eye dick.
Oh, right. I just think any references to that,
gotcha.
A little sensitive. What do you think, Shape?
Oh, yes.
There was a bit of Teflon about that, wasn't there?
There was. He got away from that, hasn't he? He hasn't been mentioned since. I'm just looking at 718 goals as a roaming centre-half forward. It's a pretty good return. He probably could have kicked 900, 850, 900.
Well, in a different era as well, he probably was a more leader going forward.
So, Koch,
pick two.
You got to pick two.
With Koch or...
I'll go next. I am going to pick Sean Burgoyne. Fairly uncontroversial pick. I think he's still playing, so like that in itself is like just ridiculous. I think I think he's a gun. I think having done it for consistently over his whole career, I guess he's always been a consistent B plus A. So I think in that respect, he's number two, because if you're redrafting, you're getting that B plus A. I think his Port years, he may have had an A plus in there, even a couple of A plus along the way, but I think mainly a B plus A, and never dropping below that B plus level still to this year. He's just like that. He's just freakish over 20 years, like literally 20 years of career. And playing, like being able to evolve his game to play in a different role. Only one All-Australian, so over 20 careers. Like, I think he's a media love child in that he gets a lot of love from the media, and he's like, I think he just plays an amazing role. I don't think he's only been one All-Australian, so in that respect, there are plenty of guys with one All-Australians in there. But doing it over that career, I mean, he had a huge impact on Hawthorn, I think, in helping to just bring a bit of polish to that team, an amazing recruit for them. But I think his Port days were amazing as well. So, yeah, I think it's a clear number two in this team.
Yeah, look, he's clutch. I wouldn't say the best thing about him, how clean he is. You put him in at the most important parts of the game. I think Clarkson still puts Burgoyne around the ball to either win the clearance or to just make something happen. The knock on him, Koch, as you've mentioned, is the fact he's only only been awarded one All-Australian, which I think is a bit, I know that we might overrate all Australians, but for playing 377 games and they've only finishing with one All-Australian, I think we have to take that into account. But I didn't have him two. Shaf, you'll probably take the player that I had at two, at three presumably, but the Daniel Kerr's career for me was consistently at a higher level. Daniel Kerr.
Oh, hold on! I gotta catch myself here.
A lot of presumptions in there.
Zell, I got news for you. You can take him at pick 4 if you want.
Oh, you're kidding! He's around, is he?
Yeah,
he's going to be around.
Well, I'll take him. I'll take him with, and perhaps I'll make the case then when it comes to that pick. But
I'm surprised by that. I'm surprised by that, given the history of drafting players who are currently playing who have a twilight in their career. And I think Kerr, if you're drafting Kerr with where you presume him to be 5 years out from the end of your career, you're predicting a steep decline. Whereas Sean Burgoyne just finished beautifully.
There wasn't much of a decline with Kerr. There really wasn't. If you
he's not playing.
No, but you can't say there's a decline in 2020 because he's not playing. Yeah, but I don't think.
I think in 2000. So in 2000, he's been retired for 7 years already.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if you're picking in 2000, if I'm Carlton picking in 2000, who I'd want to play between Burgoyne or Kerr, and who would make the biggest impact over the course of a career? Kerr still played over 200 games. I'd take Kerr. Watch Kerr. That's
why everyone gets to pick their own team. You get your own pick. Do you have any thoughts on Sean?
I still love Sean Burgoyne, but I think the way you introduced him, you summed him up perfectly. He's a very good footballer.
So wait, Zell, when you was debating whether to have Riewoldt 1, was the debate between Riewoldt or Kerr?
It may well have been, King.
Wow. Okay.
It may well have been.
Well,
it's a debate. The generational midfielder versus generational forward.
Not sure he was generational.
Oh,
yeah, about him.
He's got some blinkers. He's got some blinkers on here. I went on a Daniel Kerr binge last night. If you watch some of his highlights, I know that highlights are just short.
What about the lowlights?
What he produced? There weren't many lowlights. He was a wizard.
I will argue we have
to give some extra points for wizard.
Yeah, it's true.
The best of Daniel Kerr is up there. If Zellman's rating it on like a 4-year peak, he's got a case. From I'd say 03 to 07, he's up there with the top. He's a top 10 AFL footballer consistently over.
There wasn't much of a drop off between.
Would you say that Sean Burgoyne at that time was
Why is Cousins better than Kerr?
I rate Kerr over Cousins.
No way, Shaf.
Why is Cousins better than Kerr?
I think you
guys.
We need to get Garby on here.
I
thought Ben Cousins.
You're just repeating his name.
Six-time All-Australian. Okay, let's just start. 6-time All-Australian.
Okay, sorry. Maybe not the course of his career, but from 03 to 2007, I'd say that Kerr probably has the better 5-year.
Wow, so it's a 4-year period where Cousins was much older than him. Doesn't mean he's a better player. He's a better part of their... In a finite period of their careers.
Okay, put it this way. Who makes you more worried as a football coach, Kerr or Sean Burgoyne, at their peak?
So with regards to that, I think that if you look at Sean, if there's a bit of like the Kurt Cobain, I'll give this analogy, the Kurt Cobain theory, that a guy who has who finishes, let's say, Kurt Cobain committed suicide. But if you look at Kurt Cobain versus Eddie Vedder is still playing. So I think if Eddie Vedder playing at the peak of his powers, you get a much more favourable memory of that person as opposed to remembering 7 years that Kerr had been playing. And Sean Burgoyne hasn't been in the league. But I think if you say 03 to 07, I would assume that Sean Burgoyne was in the top 10 players in the comp as well.
He was still very good. He was still very good.
That was when he was the most elite. He was Port's best or second best player or midfielder at least at that time.
Oh, look, that's part of the fun of it. I just think Kerr was phenomenal. Like his explosive.
I can't believe that Ben
skills were insane. His he could kick on his left and his right. He was the most explosive. One of the most explosive. He was Dustin Martin before Dustin Martin. It's just a shame that he didn't extend out his career a bit more because he was so much fun to watch. But but presumably he's available at pick 4. So, Shaf, who's pick 3?
Kane Corns.
Wow.
Cut it. Cut.
Get to commercial. We'll be back after this.
So, make the case for Corns.
Oh,
because I had Corns. I won't even tell you where I had Corns.
I'm going to say 1, fantasy juggernaut.
Yeah, he was great.
2,
he was a great fantasy player.
2, the volcano.
Post-career effort is amazing. Post-career effort has just been...
Maybe gave him more points for his media.
It's very relevant post-career.
I'm arguing a lot the Sean Burgoyne case. He was consistent for 14 years.
Was he good?
He wasn't the most damaging, but he was the best tagger the game has probably seen. And he got a lot of the football. And he was, in Port Adelaide's run, which goes for a long time, from let's just say 2001 to 2007. So it's a 7-year peak. I don't know. Him and Peter Burgoyne are probably their 2 best midfielders. For a team that finished top of the ladder in 02, 03, 04, it's probably Warren Treaderay's team, but you've got to argue that he's probably consistently in their top 5 over a 6-year period.
He's not even the best Corn shape. I think Chad's better than Kane as a player.
Maybe.
Well, that's not we're doing the 2000 draft.
Yeah,
I know. I'm just making the point.
Corn's a redraftable.
I mean, I could argue that Miranda Kerr is the best Kerr as well.
Well, Sam Kerr's a better Kerr, and they're in the same family.
Yeah, that's true. You got me there, Koch.
Yeah.
You got me there. I just didn't. I mean, Kane Corns, never once watching him, and I watched a lot of his games. Yes, he was brilliant fantasy footballer. I think I had him one year. Especially had him as captain. You'd get those double points, which were brilliant because he'd get so many tackles. But he was just he was one of those. I just didn't rate him. I don't think he was a difference maker. He was good in that he was, I like the fact he was a defensive midfielder who could also have a bit of an offensive game, but he was nowhere near the output for me of Kerr or Burgoyne. Thoughts?
Interestingly, I had him originally at pick 3, but he fell as the more research I did on the other players and the more I kind of looked into him. I agree that he was consistent throughout his career, but I think the difference is I think he never got high. I mean, he made All-Australian, so obviously he did, but
2-time All-Australian, 4-time best and fairest. I think those things have to count.
I don't rate BNFs as much because I think clubs try to share BNFs around and pick players who play roles in BNFs. So.
Sure. He did win a BNF for the year they made a grand final. So
even so, that's even more so. Like full backs win BNFs in grand final years because they do a good job. It doesn't mean they're the best player.
Because Shapes, if you're lining up these players,
sure,
Kerr. That's the way I'd look at it. You've got Daniel Kerr at the start of his career versus Kane Corns at the start of his career. I just don't see in what world you can take Kane Corns.
I can't really picture Daniel Kerr playing a meaningful football game after 2007.
Wow.
He may not have.
I reckon he played amazing 6 years between 02 and 2007. I don't recall him.
Shaf, would you say he got engaged in 2009? Would that have been the beginning of the end?
For his hair, probably.
Well, we're not talking about Kane.
Just do me a
we're not
favour.
talking
Do me a
about
favour.
Daniel Kerr again, but just on
No.
Kane. The other thing, I think his big knock, and I know he said Rewell, but it's obviously a different category. He couldn't kick. Like, as a midfielder who racks it up, to not be able to kick is just to me drops him down quite a lot. And I think his pro is that you know what you're getting out of him. He's going to play 300 solid games. He's going to run like no one's ever run. And he's going to be bloody annoying, and he still is bloody annoying. But I kind of agree with Zelman that like he'd be the same in any team. He's not a product of his organisation, but is he really impacting games that much? He's taking away their best player. It's a decent role. It's probably, yeah.
I'll make the case where I reckon you put Kane Corns on Ablett and he's got a fair shot at nullifying Ablett's game.
No. Disagree.
Maybe at the time, Kane. I mean, look, Kane. He was Shapes right.
Sorry, I'll make the argument. You put Kane Corns on Kerr. I reckon he's got a fair chance of
that. Yeah,
nullifying Daniel Kerr and still getting 25 touches.
100%. I reckon Kane Corns plays on Kerr. I reckon Kane Corns gets the better of him. I'm happy to go with that.
This was the argument yesterday where we had the Gibson and Dale Morris versus Cloak and some other forward, a roughhead. And you're like, all right, if you put Dale Morris on Travis Cloak 10 times in a row, I reckon you're going Dale Morris probably wins 6-4. Like, it's kind of a way to think about it sometimes when you compare.
But Shafe, did that in itself, does that make, like, you're putting, at the end of the day, Shafe, I think you're putting Corns on Kerr, not Kerr on Corns.
That's true.
And that, to me, is a bit like, well, if you're playing a guy to nullify someone else, I think automatically that just means, yeah, they're just not as good.
Yeah.
But it's consistent.
What do you see here, boys?
I see Kane Corns.
And?
Kerr, that's amazing. And Kerr's just sidestepping him.
It just looks like Kerr is just, leaving Corns in his wake. Yeah. I googled Daniel Kerr v Kane Corns.
And
all right, well, we know who pick 4. We know who pick 4 is. It's Daniel Kerr, so I'll pocket him very quickly. And I think Koch, you're at pick 5.
Oh well, I guess we have spoken enough about Daniel Kerr in advance, so I don't need to talk about him anymore. I am going to take Bids at 5.
Didak?
Yeah, Alan Didak.
Yeah, good call.
I think that just a damaging player. Well, I'll say 2 things. I think on the one, I was tossing up between him and Kerr at this position. I think Didak, in theory, was damaging and in theory was a goal kicker. But looking at his stats, in 218 games, he kicked 274 goals only. And I know he played a bit guts, but like people would talk about him as like a gun forward or like a sneaky half forward. That's a really bad ratio for a forward, half forward flank, I reckon.
Well, where is this? I reckon his assists would have been high. I don't know if they keep those stats.
Possibly. But like a guy who's got an awesome kick, I just feel like that's not nearly enough goals. That hurt him. And I think I think he's a gun. And I think you pick him. I think if you play his career out 10 times, I think he has a great career 7 or 8 times. So I think like for that reason, you just take him. Like I think accurate kickers and clutch goal kickers are good. So you take him pretty high. Could go in the guts, so that's also helpful. But probably if he looked after himself, might have got a bit of a longer career. But that's maybe a bit of a generalisation based on associated wizardry. So the wizardry
Wizards. I mean, Didak and Kerr, both of them had some wizardries that could have hampered their careers. But I agree 100%. Koch Didak was an absolute jet. And probably, Shape, did his career start slowly? I always remember like he was almost considered a bit of a bust when he first started for the first couple of years. And I remember Collingwood supporters were a bit restless.
He's just it was just a pure forward pocket at the start. He hadn't developed the engine or the ability to find the football. He was probably a very low possession player in his first few years. He had a few years where he was definitely in that Stevie J mold where pushed up into the midfield, became a very good clearance player. Probably his peak probably didn't last too long, but his peak definitely coincided with Collingwood's, where he was probably very good from, I'd say, 06 to 2010.
Yeah, and he won I think he led their goal kicking or came close to it in 2010, 41 goals.
He did.
So that's pretty good return. But yeah, he was, as an opposition supporter, and that's the way I like to look at it, like you always wanted to make sure that Didac was kept contained.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that's why pick 5's a pretty handy spot for him. King Shafir, pick 6.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I also had Didac at 5. Now there's a question of whether I go positional or whether I just take the best available. So I think I'm going to just go with Scott Thompson.
Interesting.
Argument 4, and now look, Kochen might not know this, but Zellman definitely knows this. But back in 2010, I had a very famous and timely one-on-one catch-up with Neil Craig.
Shape, when you start a sentence with back in 2010, there's about 50 stories that come to mind. So that could have gone anywhere.
Very, yeah.
But I think the Neil Craig
It was an
one
eventful
deserves-
time in your life.
Precisely. But look, seeing Neil Craig on Broadway Avenue in Manhattan was just one of the highlights of that overseas trip with Zellman and Chris Noss.
I remember.
Now, Shape, if you remind me, was he shocked that someone had recognised him?
He was flabbergasted, some would say.
Does he have an entourage?
I don't remember my exact dialogue, but I recall surprising him.
Yeah. Didn't you say Neil?
Yes.
Neil.
And he had some would say a wry smile that he was recognised. I did get a photo with him.
Was he chuffed with himself?
He was a little chuffed with himself. He was still the current coach. I think he was sacked maybe about 3 months later. About 6 games into the next season.
They really didn't want to sack him, did they? They kept him on for a long time.
Well, so he joined in strange circumstances. So Gary Ayres was fired halfway through the 2004 season, and he was the interim coach and was very much known as one of those sports scientists coaches. He
remember
the fitness coach. He knew the sports science of the football, and he had a decent run in 2004, and they just kept him. And look, he was a good coach. He in his first full season, he finished first. He finished first in 2005, but they just kept falling short in the finals. Now, how does it tie into Scott Thompson? Well, Scott Thompson is their Adelaide's best midfielder in a 6-year run where they're making finals every single year. That's it. That's my argument.
Is this not Mark Rasciuto territory? Is this past Rasciuto?
Nah, Rooey's like an aging forward by this stage. Scott Thompson's their best midfielder for a 7 or 8 season.
He played 308 games as well, and he averaged 30 touches in 2011, but I think over 26 disposals for 7 years straight. And you're right, Shaf. He was Adelaide's best midfielder when they were really good. Still trying to. Where did the Neil Craig reference come in?
He was his coach.
Mentioned Scott Thompson. He was
his
his
coach when he was good.
That's it. But he didn't mention Scott Thompson when you met him in New York. No?
He didn't say. If you ever do a redraftables, I would have taken Scott Thompson higher than what he was drafted. He didn't say that to you.
Well, he was still in the prime.
He was a guy. And he had a really good rig as well, Scott Thompson.
Smooth mover.
I think that gets some extra points. But yeah, he was a very, very good player. And
he was decent.
One reason why I think he was very good. He was a B+ footballer.
Okay, Cap.
B++.
So Scott Thompson versus Kane Corns. You really reckon you take Scott Thompson, Kane Corns, like both played about 300 games. Do you really think, like, to me, I just see Scott Thompson versus Kane Corns. I'd take Scott Thompson just ahead because he's a better. I feel like if you're an offensive midfielder, you're more dangerous. Why wouldn't you prefer Scott Thompson over Kane Cornes? They both were consistent.
Yeah,
I've got Scott Thompson over Kane Cornes.
My argument for Kane Cornes kind of comes back to what David Bluestein theory was. How good was the player relative to the role that they were asked to perform? Kane Cornes is probably the best player in his position for an extended period of time. Scott Thompson, very good footballer, don't get me wrong. Was he ever is it the kind of the Ben Cunnington theory? There's still a Scott Thompson on every single list. He was very good for a decent period of time, but every team has a Scott Thompson. There's a
but the purpose of redraftables, the criteria you use is you're lining these players up and who would you take first. So putting aside Dave's point, which is very soundly made because he's a very smart man, I still think that, as Koch was saying, you look at Scott Thompson, you look at Kane Cornes, side by side, you've got the hulking beast in Scott Thompson with beautiful jawline. And then you've got the small little scrawny, little yapper in Kane Cornes. And I think for me, it's Scotland Thompson.
So you're redrafting? Are we changing the order? Are we redrafting the redraft?
All right, so...
No, I think Shane Sagan's Scott Thompson.
I don't know. I'm just picking a random season here. In games where Port Adelaide played Adelaide, I don't even know if Kane Cornes tagged Scott Thompson. But here's my argument.
Mm-hmm.
In 2009, Scott Thompson only gets 20 possessions and 23 possessions against Adelaide. In 2000, against Port Adelaide. In 2008, just picking random seasons, 17 and 27. So fairly below his season averages.
I guess the question is...
Argument, Shafe, about positional players. So potentially you could have an argument there, but the thing that I don't like about that argument and how it relates to Kane is that I don't believe that a tagger is a real position. He's a midfielder, and the reality is, yes, he was a tagger, but he was only a tagger because he wasn't good enough to be a proper midfielder. So
I don't know about that. Kane Cornes is a consistent 25 possession footballer. He's not just
fine. I don't think he plays the same position as Scott Thompson. I don't think he plays a different position.
Yeah, but Scott Thompson doesn't have that much more impact around. Kane Cornes for his career, and the first thing you think about is defensive midfielder tagger. He averages for his career 23.5 possessions per game. Scott Thompson for his career averages, wait for it, 23.5 possessions per game. They're dead eye in terms of their average possession.
Scott Thompson I think we all agree that Scott Thompson was more damaging.
Yeah, on one side of the ball, but Kane Cornes is much more damaging on the other side of the ball, preventing
So, Shaf, you're picking, So look, it's a great debate. It's a great debate. I don't think we're going to solve that. We'll add that to the Middle East crisis or potential conflict, and see if we can solve both at once. Scott Thompson and Cornes.
So Zell, you're up next.
Pick 7. Pick 7.
Yeah.
I've got a man who I actually had pick 4 in my list at pick 7. So I'll snap up Drew Petrie.
Yeah, love it.
332 games. 5-time leading goal kicker at North, but he also did it I even thought his last year at West Coast was most impressive. He actually was really good.
Yeah.
He was really good.
Yeah.
And I think if he was playing he's good looking, he's tall, but he was playing at a big Melbourne club or even one of the bigger interstate clubs, he probably would have got even more recognition. He's almost got that Ben Brown type syndrome of you're playing at North Melbourne, so you're not on Broadway.
Yeah.
But he was North's best forward for his whole career almost, until Ben Brown came in. And also just multiple positions. He played some games in defence. He played a lot of time in the ruck. Really, athletic, very difficult matchup, good kick for goal. Didn't really have much of a weakness in his game. And I just thought he was a really solid footballer.
He's basically diet Nick Rewald.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But taller.
More accurate.
And more accurate. Maybe he's better.
The redraftables, Kerr, Petrie, Rewald.
Yeah. Scott Thompson.
What I was really doing, I was just playing with you guys. I wanted to bait you into Rewalt, so Petrie would slip to pick 7.
Oh, Zellman's developing quite the list here. He's got Rewalt, Kerr, and Petrie. He's got his three favourites.
He's got his top 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unbelievable
It's
manipulation.
amazing these players have slipped. But was he? Do you guys agree that he was a very solid footballer?
Yes.
Yeah, I do. And consistent, similar to Sean Burgoyne. I guess it's interesting. We've had those two different types of players who are either consistent their whole career or kind of up and down, or had a smaller peak, and he was just the same almost his whole career, which is a real credit to him. And I think finished his career really strongly. So no surprise he fell to Zellman, or that he's gone to Zellman, or Zellman's snapped him up, because he's finished his career very strongly. You know that's what Zellman loves in a player.
Yeah, Zell looks at that. But Shafir, you'd also remember a final against Essendon in 2012, was it, or 2013?
Where he did Frank the Tank.
Yeah, but wasn't he like there? Didn't he turn the game?
He was the match winner. Yeah, and he did the Frank the Tank celebration. It's haunts me to this very day. Kochen, you're up next.
Play, Drew. I feel like we're dropping. Yeah, I feel like we're dropping away.
Yeah, the drop off comes.
But I'm going to take Darren Jolly next.
Really?
Yeah. He's been frequently talked about in podcasts today, so thought he'd get a natural pick today. I think he was a important player in certain games, as ruckmen are. I think that maybe that's one of the things I've seen over the last discussions that we've been having, is that certain ruckmen can be really important in big games, and I think he was one of those guys, or play a specific role for a period of time, even though he had a very long career and played 237 games. I think he had peaks of his career that were really good and really played really important roles. So I think if you're drafting, I think you're very happy taking it Aaron Jolly at 8 and hopefully waiting that he develops and becomes an important part of your premiership team.
Yeah, so we have talked about Darren Jolly across multiple drafts here because he keeps getting traded. If Darren Jolly ends up on Fremantle and then gets traded to, I don't know, Essendon, and he never plays for Sydney or Collingwood in premiership seasons, so we just think of him as like, oh yeah, he was a decent ruckman for 10 years. You know what I mean? Like, how much is Darren Jolly influencing these premierships versus like right time, right place?
Well, I think there's an element to which clubs who are on the cusp look for a Darren Jolly type. So I think him being the player that he was, I think it's not just if Darren Jolly goes to a crap team, then he's not as good. I think you got to give him some credit for being the type of player who clubs who are on the cusp look for to him over the edge on 2 occasions. So I guess that's the counter to that argument a little bit. And maybe that's giving him too much credit, much more luck, but yeah.
He was he played in 4 grand finals. Do you know that? 2 wins, 2 losses.
And one draw.
And one, he played in the draw too.
Yeah.
So he played 5 grand finals?
Well, I like your theory that's 4. I hate when people say Sinkilda played in 3 grand finals in 2 years. I'm like, no, they played in 2. Like, one was a replay.
I like the pick swap that you spoke about last time, Shaf, how Sydney parlayed they gave a first round pick to Melbourne originally. Yeah. And then they ended up bettering that, getting 6 years of Jolly and then bettering that pick. Yeah.
Very rare you see that.
He's also had some personal issues lately as well,
I saw that.
Which I find a bit sad. I mean, this whole draft class, well, not this whole draft class, but there's a huge number of players that we've already spoken about. Almost every second player has had some off-field issues.
The fame of the block went to his head, you'd say, maybe.
Yeah, but he was a good player. The funny thing is, like, there was another ruckman taken in this draft, Jamie Charman, who didn't make my list. But like, honestly, could you tell me that is Darren Jolly that much better than Jamie Charman?
I don't know who Jamie Charman is.
I'm going to say he's better, yes.
Yeah, but not by much. Like, what's Jolly's strengths?
I agree. I said this 2 minutes ago. I think you may have been off air there, Zill. Like, if he plays for Fremantle then Essendon instead of Sydney and Collingwood, is he just known as, he's the guy that played for 10 seasons and did okay?
But he still played, as I said, I think there is a drop-off here, and my case for him is that he still played 237 games, and it was a solid, regardless of even if he, I kind of feel like that's where we're at in this draft, is that, I mean, I had him on, I think if you group him with the players below him, I think he's just a bit better than them because of the premierships. So I guess it depends how you're drafting with the idea of what they're going to be as a player, regardless of club, or you're redrafting them based on the career that they had. You know, I think at this point, if I'm separating him and the couple way below him, I'm separating them based on the career that he had, because I think they're all they're pretty similar, the guys.
Yeah. My case for him was that he played in, the grand finals he played in. He had to play against Dean Cox at his peak. Would you say, Shaf, in 05 and 06?
Yes.
And I wouldn't say that I think Cox was good on those games, but I don't think that Cox was, I don't think that he was best on ground, or he was typically good. But I think Jolly always gave him a really tough matchup, and he was tough, and I think that he played him really hard. And then I think that was the value with him. And when Collingwood won the flag with him, who was Geelong's ruckman then, Koch?
Brad Adams. Or was it
Yeah, he had
Mark?
to play against
Blake.
We had Oddens, and then against St Kilda in the granny, he had Gardner. But I think he was playing. He was always. He always did enough as in that position. But I think it gets back to the broader point, and this is the one that I was struggling with when I was rating Jolie. How do you rate ruckman? I mean, we spoke about Cox in a previous pod. Well, you guys spoke about Cox in a previous pod. He was a once in a lifetime ruckman and changed the ruck position. Jolie definitely can't consider as a once in a lifetime ruckman, but he was still a very good ruckman.
And Bones, I think to that point, Cap, I think he was traded for pick 15 after playing 50 games. So he obviously was good at that point.
So look,
what were they looking for?
So I didn't want to. I wanted to let you keep going. In 2005, Darren Jolly is Sydney's second ruckman behind Jason Ball, and in 2006, he's their primary ruckman because Jason Ball retired. So look, he's the second ruckman in their premiership win, and in 2010, like who's the opposing ruckman? An aging Michael Gardner. Like, it was his final game, I think, or close to it. So, in his two premiership wins, he's the second ruckman, and he's going up against probably St Kilda's weakest player by that stage.
Did you say an Asian Michael Gardner?
Yes, yes.
I think he wasn't Gardner in St Kilda by 2009.
Well, Michael Gardner was great in 2009, and he was just cooked by 2010.
Yeah, he was cooked. And another wizard to add to our list of wizards.
Yeah, there's lots of wizards.
It was a good time for the Wizards.
Good pick, Koch. I think he's a good player.
So, look, I'm going to go at pick 9. I think I'm going to go with Teddy Richards. In the famed selection of going with the defender, I think he was a pretty decent defender for as soon as he left Essendon. Absolutely kills me because he would have been a great foe for our competitor, for our opposition. But he was solid without being spectacular, and probably had a few good moments from time to time. Very good in 2012, the winning season, and forgotten the fact that he actually played in the 2006 losing team as well. So, look, he was probably up for about 8 or 9 years at Sydney.
Shave.
He was really interesting player, Richards, wasn't he? Sorry, Coach, you go.
Oh, is he better or worse than Phil Davis? Phil loved Phil Davis.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, he's probably had the longer career. Phil Davis's peak is probably better, but Ted Richards is very solid.
I think Davis is probably a better player. Richards was more just a lockdown. He wasn't much attacking play in Richards' game, but he always did it. He always got the best forward.
Yeah.
But you have to remember though, Sydney's game plan suited Richards as well, didn't it? I mean, they were always, especially under Rooey, always had a lot of help for their defenders. And I had him at pick 8, so it's a good pick. I clearly rated him. But I do remember early in his career and in the first couple of years at Sydney, he was always in and out of the side, or thought of as, I feel like his whole career there was like a question mark as to whether he was any good until he was their fullback week on week and always got the job on the best forwards and always seemed to do a good job. So I think it's a fair pick, but it does show the drop off in the draft, doesn't it?
Yep.
So pick 10.
Yep.
I've got another guy who I think had ebbs and flows in his career. Like first year, he won the Rising Star that he played, and then I think the couple of years after that, he was either injured. There was that famous incident when he was on TV and he passed out during an interview with David Schwartz at the time.
What was that? I saw the video.
I think we've lost you there, Zellman, for a second.
Actually, I think I just lost you there, Coach.
No, we're back on now, I think.
I think, Zell, is it Zellman's internet that's a bit choppy?
Yeah, I think it's Zellman's. Me and Shafir are on par now.
I'm curious. I don't know who he was about to say. Cozzy.
Sorry for the spoiler. That was Cozzy.
Cozzy! Didn't have him in my list.
Can you guys hear? Can you hear me, Uncle?
We can hear you, Uncle. I think we've lost you.
Well, yeah, I was just saying that Cozzy.
Keep going.
Nah,
yeah, Cozzy's my pick.
Oh, yeah?
What's this footy show thing?
No, David Schwartz interviewed him on AFL Game Day, I think, or one of the Sunday footy shows, and he
I saw that video.
Out. Yeah.
What, was he drunk?
No, he had delayed concussion symptoms.
Fuck, that's so scary. I saw that video the other week. That's crazy.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I rate his career. He played 200 games. He was their best forward when they were at their, when they were competing in grand finals. So I think that if you look back, St Kilda supporters probably always expected more because of how well he started his career, and he won the Rising Star, obviously, in the first year.
That's true.
It's still a pretty good return, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a classic case of like, how rare is it, especially in AFL, that a player just peaks so early? He didn't drop like that. He kind of like that and had a couple of up seasons, but he was very good early and
never got his body right.
Yeah.
I think the case for Koschitzke, I had him a bit lower, but I was toying with him. I think the case for Koschitzke, and he could be, I think we've taken him, he's probably right, even though I had him lower, is that I think if you're drafting, if you play his career 10 times, his ceiling is probably just a bit lower than Rewalt's and probably higher than many of the players picked above him. And I think he just had a bad run of injuries. He got that knockout, I think probably his concussions derailed his career. As in another who's their recent?
Do you think he was played out of position? Do you think he could? I reckon he could have made it like as a ruckman, I never felt like he had this great forward sense.
Drew Petrie type.
I reckon, he was much better suited to actually playing up the ground, but because Rewald already occupied that position, they kind of pigeonholed him to this third forward type next to Fraser Gehry.
It does go without saying how big an impact like luck has on these players' careers. And Dave touched on it yesterday. Where you get drafted, your injury history, rehab, staff at the football club at the time. Like Petrie, I don't even remember him being injured. That's why he played 330 games. But Cozzy, it felt like he was playing 50% of the games throughout his career. There were always other 11 to 15 games a year. He'd miss like big chunks every single year, so he just couldn't get that continuity, which is probably why he.
Well, sorry, you go.
No, that's what I was saying. It's just unfortunate.
I was just going to say, I feel like 2006, that hip and shoulder, that when he got concussed, he's probably ruined his career. Like I think it's I feel like to that point, having potential, and I think like he's got knocked out there, and I feel like he was always under a cloud, and he was always worried about that. And
You think it was a lot of it was in his head in terms of his aggression towards the football?
well, I'm just looking here. He got a fractured skull. He couldn't return. He as Cappy said, he fainted during that interview. I just think it's that one of those things that, like, I think concussions are still much worse than we give them credit for, and particularly over the long term, based on zero medical understanding myself. But I just kind of feel like it probably did have an impact on him. I'm going to go out there and say that it did.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. Pick 11.
Yeah, Kocho.
Is that me?
Yep.
I'm hating this. I'm hating this pick, I have to say. I'm not really liking it.
It gets pretty dire from here, doesn't it?
Murky.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go Dom Cassisi.
Like Euro 2004.
Euro 2004.
Firstly, being part of an iconic commentary snapshot that gets him high marks at this point as a separator. And he was captain for a while, so that's really good to say. No, he played enough games.
He was captain for a while.
What am I going to say? Like, be more Daniel Cross. Like,
I'm trying to find the YouTube.
Who would know who's better? He was part. He got an iconic. It was an iconic commentary.
It put Dwayne Russell on the map.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm pretty sure that I'm reasonably certain that Fox Sports was debating to go with between two South Australian commentators. One was Dwayne Russell, and the other one was John Casey. And they just realised that Dwayne Russell had better sound bites like this. I mean, it was either Euro 2004, Carlton. It's a career high possessions for Dom Cassisi today.
Oh dear. Yeah, well, Dom, I'm happy.
There's probably not much.
I'm not happy to have Dom, but welcome Dom anyway.
Yeah, you can.
He was captain for 4 or 5 years.
Everyone needs a Dom Cassisi. But he was a tagger too. So
yeah, I know that goes against King Corns.
They had Kane and Dom just rolling around, didn't they?
Very
not what you
defensive
really
team.
want in a squad, is it?
Nah. King Shafir pick.
So look, pick 12. I'm not really liking any of these players. I think they're all a little overrated, including Dom Cassisi, who's probably a little underrated and overrated, if that makes sense.
Bit of Russell Westbrook about him.
A guy that has slipped, who is nothing special, but he's probably just the best available. The crisscross, Daniel Cross.
Yeah, good pick.
He's just okay.
Yeah.
He's a accumulator. Played for much longer than we realised, because he did have a late career resurgence at Melbourne. Kind of in that.
I don't know if it was a resurgence. It was
just that. Once again, I'd love to. Like, how many times have we heard this from every single club? They pick up a 32-year-old, and then all you hear all preseason, off-season. Yeah, the young guys is getting around him. Yeah, the standards he's setting at training. I'm like, what did they do before this guy got there? Like, why is a 33-year-old guy who comes from Western Bulldogs setting standards at training? Like, come on, like, have you ever played at AJ Kochen where you've got a 30?
The famous
Boys came to the club. He set the standards. No,
exactly.
When I
good afternoon to you, Ezra, if you're listening.
I swindled Camco on a fantasy trade with Daniel Cross. I think I gave him a broken down Jackson Ackermanis.
Jackson Ackermanis. Sorry about that.
That
was very good.
It caused
Greg Crappin.
It was a veto, wasn't it?
There was almost a veto, but Cross came to the team known as What Is Moss's Hair.
What is Moss's Hair?
And was a great contributor. Pick 13, I'm going to go with Chris Newman.
Yeah.
I just felt sorry for Chris Newman, really. Like, he played in what a sad career. Like, three straight losing finals. I think he was a B footballer. Would you say, Shaf? Koch? Like,
yeah,
B. If you had to grade him, B, sometimes B plus. Good kick, good defender. I think he's the type of player who played in Geelong.
He wasn't a
He
good.
played in
I
Geelong.
think he's a
He's a
C
good
plus at best.
C plus. If he played
Nah,
in
he's
Geelong,
alright.
he's better than Zach Tui. Like he's that. Like
Nah, is he better than Zach Tui?
I don't think he's better than Zach Tui.
I don't think he's
Oh,
had
that's
one
definitely
career
better.
highlight. I mean, definitely not a Dwayne Russell commentary special. But
He was childhood neighbours with Brendan Favola. So
that's right. He was good friends with Brendan Favola. It was this weird friendship that the two of them had for some reason.
because they were neighbours in Narre Warren.
Yeah, they were. And now he lives near us, actually, down in the southeast. So I see him around a bit, running around. He's still very fit, but he played 268 games. He played for a middle of the road side most of it.
He lost a lot of games.
Lost a lot of games, but then unfortunately, like did he retire when Deledio left as well? Was it the same year? Like just before they?
Earlier.
Or maybe a couple of years before.
Yeah,
it would have been earlier.
I don't think he played in a final, or maybe he did.
No, he did. He played in 3 straight losing finals.
Okay.
He never won a final in his whole career.
His last game was a losing elimination final.
Yeah.
According to Wikipedia.
To us.
No, it would have been the 2015 one. Yeah. Unlucky.
Kochen,
your final
pick for the swag.
Yep.
It's tough here. There's a real choice between hometown loyalty and hometown love of like an impact of a player and probably who was a better player. But I'm actually going to sweep the rug from under Bones' feet and take Adam McPhee.
Really?
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, he made an All-Australian.
He did make an All-Australian team.
He made an All-Australian.
His 2004 season was spectacular. I don't understand how that guy didn't take.
Freo or Essendon then?
It was his second season in Essendon. We were he's traded for basically. Sorry, I'll let you do your spiel in a second, Kocho. But he's basically traded from Fremantle to Essendon for a late round pick for nothing. No one, I don't think anyone had even heard of him. His first season in Essendon was like just okay. He's probably in the best 22, but not by much. And then by 2004, when we're still, we finished 8th, but we made the semi-finals. We're still, thinking we can compete. He has a blinder when we have Lloyd, Lucas, Fletcher, and Hurd. He's our best player by a country mile in this one season. Makes All-Australian, wins our best and fairest, and then just teeters down for, I don't know what happened. No one knows.
Quite an unattractive looking player, so that's why he wasn't in my 15. I just don't know about the peroxide. Maybe that was in at the time, but
I'm pretty sure you had similar colour hair at the same time. I'm just going to say, stop calling kettle. I'm just going to say.
But Koch, why wouldn't you go with Maximus Rook here? He was a culture changer.
I need to get outside the echo chamber.
Well, yeah. And also,
I just think I'm sticking with my draft strategy that if you pick a player, if you're going to play a season 10 times out of 10 or do this draft 10 times out of 10, I think Adam McPhee has a high success. I think he's got more strings to his bow that give you a better chance of having a good career than Max Rook. I think Max Rook, yes, he was important in a couple of flags, but I think Max Rook's, in some respect, grow on trees, but in some respects, he's important in like the culture of things. But Max Rook
was smell another Twitter poll.
I think so.
Max Rook or Adam McPhee.
We've got such good feedback on the first one, so it's important to keep it going. Ride the lightning, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Welcome, Adam McPhee. Can't say I'm stoked about that, but well done. He's here.
Look, he probably is one of the more talented players in the last, out of the remaining players. He's pretty.
I think he wasn't talented. I think he just had like amazing attributes. I think he was just like tall and strong and fast and particularly skillful.
Longevity was definitely on his side. I don't think he ever really got injured. I mean, he got dropped a few times.
Was he good, Bones? Like, what was he good at?
He's
a good mark.
He's a
good kick.
He's kind of like Andrew Mackie, but not nearly as good.
He was a utility. He played a lot in defence, I remember.
Yeah,
he's strong.
He's a halfback flanker, but strong, probably a bit taller. He wasn't so great at playing on talls, but he wasn't like he's just the guy that you're like, yeah, okay, he's a little bit different in our back line, and you kind of want a bit different. You kind of want to have a guy that's a little bit funky that pushes up a bit further, that goes for the more courageous mark and misses it. Like you kind of need that guy from time to time. A bit like Michael Hibberd.
Now, King, with time ticking, who are you going to take at pick 15?
So I'm debating between 3 premiership stars of Maxi Rook, Josh Hunt, and another one, a more famous one also for things he's not unbeknownst to him. But we mentioned this
also
last time.
The celebrations as well. Important.
With Mark Choco Williams.
Is that who you're taking?
I'm surprised you didn't mention my guy.
Graham Johncock.
Yeah,
I had Johncock.
Higher than Mark Williams.
I'm going to go with Mark Williams. I think, his career ended abruptly, but
why did it end so quickly?
Well, so here's the thing. So I'd say his first 7 seasons, if you stopped it at the end of 2008, he finishes in the top 5 in this draft. He's a Hawthorn leading goal scorer. He's a premiership hero, kicking 4 goals on the 2008 grand final. Sorry. Dead-eye Dick. Amazing celebration. Kind of that great combo forward, the Russell Robertson type. Not that he's a great comparison. And then he has a weird 2009 season, and he's the centerpiece of a trade to Essendon and plays 4 games. And then that's it. So
it's so odd.
Yeah.
So he injured his knee. It says he injured his knee in 2009 and then missed half the season, then got traded. So is that an injury situation?
No, he played the first 4 games in 2010, and he didn't get a touch for the first 2. And then he plays this weird game against Carlton where he kicks like 4 or 5 goals, and one's from the boundary, and he's basically our match winner. And you're like, oh shit, we got a good player here. And then plays 1 more game, gets dropped, and then that was it. So
interesting.
Really weird. Graham Johncock played 227 games, which is, and he played in a really good Adelaide side as well. So
he was good.
Fellas, I need to run soon. But Shafir, is there anyone else that we've missed out on who potentially could have?
Well, to go on the Hawthorn bandwagon here, they've used this draft to pick up Robert Campbell, premiership player, Michael Osborne, premiership player. Robert Copeland, 3-time premiership player.
I had Eamon Buchanan sneaking around there as well. I thought he was pretty good.
He was.
You're getting excited about Eamon Buchanan, I can see.
No, not at all.
But Josh Hunt, I thought, was...
A lot of premiership players, though. So just to go the ones that we didn't select, Robert Copeland, 3-time. Martin Pike, 3 more premierships at Brisbane.
But he's not eligible, is he?
No, ineligible.
Luke Ablett, Eamon Buchanan, Dylan McLaren, ended up in Carlton there for a little bit. Richard Osborne and Robert Campbell. So, some...
And Josh Hunt.
And Josh Hunt, of course.
And Josh Hunt. It was also the famous draft where David Teague was taken, I think, pick 60 in the rookie draft. So it was the start of the Teague train back in 2000.
It's true.
Taken by North Melbourne.
Why? So Teague, and did he win a BNF for you as well?
Yeah, he won a Carlton Best and Fairest, but he was picked by North. He was taken by North in this draft.
Picked by North and then traded. Right. Well, what a note to end the podcast on.
What a great note.
Choo-choo.
Sending love to you both. Uncle Zed needs to get going, but I look
Happy
forward
Mother's
to the
Day.
upload.
Sending love to the mothers.
Happy Mother's Day to everyone.
Love your work all.
See you guys.